First of all, that's a very inspirational letter that you've read, and reminds us of our shared legacy as a nation. It also makes you appreciate the freedoms we have in this country, the opportunity to stand here today and have this vibrant debate. Reminded that around the world people don't have that opportunity. Reminded that around the world people are still losing not just their freedoms, but their lives for purposes of speaking out. I will confess that I hope we can avoid the hanging part of the situation that you've outlined, and I'm sure we will, because we're so blessed to live in this republic. Senator Cruz, I do something every week where I take letters from my constituents, I read them in a video on the air, and then I answer them. I call it the constituent mailbox, and I've been doing that now since I've gotten here. And that's important because it allows us to answer the real questions of real people and their comments. They're not always nice letters, by the way, so we address those too, because that's important. I think that one of the benefits we have with the advances in technology is that the people we serve and work for can now reach us directly and speak to us in real time, as opposed to the days gone by where people had trouble accessing their elected officials. So with your indulgence, as you've given me time, you haven't yielded the floor, but as you've given me time, I'd like to read a few of these letters that I've received and emails that I've gotten. I think they're all emails, so I wanted to read them. The first is from someone named Luis. He lives in Cutler Bay, Florida, which is in South Florida, down where I live in Miami-Dade County. Here's what he writes. He writes, "There are so many companies with a large number of part-time workers. The latest company, Trader Joe's, in which I have a family member, will lose her part-time health benefits because of Obamacare. She works as a substitute English teacher in New Jersey, and the job does not offer any health benefits to part-time substitute teachers. She has to be a full-time teacher in order to receive the health benefits. She decided not to leave her job at Trader Joe's because they offered her health benefits as a part-time worker. Put yourselves as present grandparents and grandparents in her own situation. What a hard pill to swallow. What is she supposed to do now?" So this letter talks about a family member of hers that is a part-time teacher in New Jersey, but also works at a place called Trader Joe's. It's a restaurant, and the reason why she works there is for the health benefits that it offered. But now she's losing that, and unfortunately she's not alone. This is an article from Bloomberg back on the 19th of September of this year. It highlights all these upheavals that are going on by private employers. UPS is dropping coverage for employed spouses. IBM is reworking its retiree benefits. Let me explain that one for a second. They're going to send their retirees to the private exchanges. They said the move was made to help keep premiums low for the rest of their workers that are impacted by Obamacare. Walgreens, the largest U.S. drugstore chain, has told 160,000 workers that they must buy insurance through a private exchange rather than continuing to have it offered by the company, by Walgreens. This is not alone. Stanford University researchers voiced concerns in a study last week. They wrote that the rising premiums could drive workers from employer plans to coverage under the health law, boosting costs for the government by as much as $6.7 billion. There are other examples of businesses that are doing this. You talked about Trader Joe's. That's a closely held supermarket chain. I said a restaurant. I apologize. Supermarket chain. It said it would end health benefits next year for part-time workers. This is the real disruption in real lives. So one thing is to stand here and have people debate about the theory of Obamacare and what great things it might do for some people, according to the supporters of this law. Another thing is to put a human face on the story. We already know just from this email alone of one person in America living in New Jersey, a part-time teacher and a worker at Trader Joe's, who has lost her benefits and will now be thrown into this uncertain world of exchanges because of this law, because of Obamacare. Here's another email. This one comes from Kissimmee, Florida. That's in Central Florida. You may know that as the home of Walt Disney World. This is from Patty. She writes, as mentioned in your letter, my letter, she's referring to a letter I sent to Secretary Sebelius, urging her to visit SeaWorld to discuss the impact that Obamacare will have when enacted in the near future. I, Patty, the writer of this letter, am a part-time employee at Valencia College in Orlando. This is a community college. By the way, I'm a big fan of community colleges. Community colleges are the backbone of retraining, but it's also the only access point available to many of our people. So if you're out there trying to work to support your family, let's say you are a single parent trying to raise 3 kids and you have to work during the day, community colleges offer one of the few places where you can get an advanced degree and the skills you need for a better job. One of the best ways to improve your pay and your economic security is to get an education. Community colleges are an access point for people all over the country. I'm a huge fan of community colleges. We have great ones in Florida. Valencia is one of the great ones. She is a part-time employee of Valencia College in Orlando. My hours, too, have been cut from 29 hours to 25 hours to avoid any negative impact of the Obamacare Health Care Act. I have numerous emails from my supervisor and human resources stating that my hours are being cut specifically because of this. I have lost the hours that made it possible to live in a severely reduced income and know that I will never get those hours back as positions have been created by the extra hours. So we have more people working and earning less. I'm not really asking anything. I'd just like you to know what this government is doing to my ability to survive. This is not an email from a millionaire or a billionaire. This is not an email from someone who has made it, is making a ton of cash. This is an email from a part-time worker at a community college with desperation that comes out from the email. Part-time worker losing hours. You know what those hours mean? 4 hours a week of pay cut to someone. She writes about it. She says, I would just like you to know what this government is doing to my ability to survive. You want to know why a growing number of Americans are starting to doubt whether the American dream is still alive? Read this email. Unfortunately, we're hearing stories about this all the time. Here's an article from CNBC, published Monday the 23rd of September, this week. It leads off with this line: with open enrollment for Obamacare about to begin, small and medium-sized businesses are not hiring because of the uncertainty surrounding the implementation of the new law, says the CEO of the nation's 5th largest staffing company. Quote, companies are really not interested in hiring full-time people. That's really the issue with Obamacare, Express Employment Professionals boss Bob Funk told CNBC Squawk Box on Monday. By the way, Mr. Funk is the former chairman of the Kansas City Federal Reserve. Now, someone, the former auto czar at the Treasury, Mr. Steve Ratner, disputes his assertion. He says, I don't think with the approach of Obamacare you see the numbers of people suddenly stopping hiring. But Mr. Funk argues, and he counters very persuasively. He says, quote, we're out there on mainstream, and Obamacare is affecting the job hiring picture. Whether it's in the numbers or not, it is affecting small and medium-sized businesses. They are not going to hire until they know what their costs are going to be. We don't know what the rules are going to be, Funk added, but they haven't written half of the rules, and it's affecting businesses and permanent hiring out there. That's why our industry is growing quite rapidly, unquote. So here you have a person tied to the government basically saying, well, these guys out there don't know what they're talking about. The numbers don't bear this out. And then you have someone who reminds them, I'm on the front lines. That's what Mr. Funk is doing. He's on the front lines. He's seeing what's happening, and he's very clear. He says we are out there on mainstream, and Obamacare is affecting the job hiring picture. You read it in this email. Listen what she says. This is from Patty in Kissimmee. This is what she says. I have lost the hours that made it possible to live in a severely reduced income and know that I will never get those hours back as positions have been created by the extra hours. You know what she's saying? She's saying what they've done is they've reduced her hours and then just hired additional people to make it up. They've created another part-time job to make up for it. This is the impact of Obamacare. By the way, with all due respect to my colleagues, look, I will tell you right now, in case people are wondering, every single member of the Republican conference here in the Senate is prepared to repeal Obamacare right now. The debate we're having in the party, you hear all this noise in the media, the debate we're having is about the tactics, the right way to do it. The one thing I would say, however, is what the last day has provided us is an extraordinary opportunity to tell these stories. There's more. Here's an email from Bill in Panama City, Florida. That's in Northwest Florida. Great place for spring break if you're in college and can afford to go. Maybe you've lost your part-time job, so now you can't. Here's what Bill writes. This is just a note to let you know that you can include me as another one of your constituents who has seen my health care costs go up by over $200 a month. And I also just learned that my girlfriend, who works for a major corporation, is losing her health care after she retires because of Obamacare. I hope you will continue your fight to defund this disastrous bill. Well, I wish, Bill, that obviously you feel terrible for the situation you're facing. certainly for the situation that your girlfriend is facing, unfortunately, you're not alone. Let me read you something that Jim Angle from Fox News published on the 24th of this month. I guess that was yesterday, right? He tells the story of Andy and Amy Mangione of Louisville, Kentucky, and of their 2 boys. And he leads off by saying, these are just the kind of people who should be helped by Obamacare. But they recently got a nasty surprise in the mail. This is a quote. When I saw the letter, this is Andy's quote, Andy Mangione, when I saw the letter when I came home from work, he described it as a large red wording on the envelope from his insurance carrier, and it said, your action required, Benefit Changes Act now. He said, of course I opened it immediately. And guess what that letter had in the mail? It had stunning news. His insurance, the insurance for his family, his 2 boys, his wife, and him, insurance that they were buying in the individual marketplace, was going to almost triple next year, from $333 a month to $965 a month. And in the letter, the carrier made it clear that the increase was in order to be compliant with the new health care law. Mr. Mangione goes on to say, this isn't a Cadillac plan. This isn't even a silver plan. This is a high deductible plan where I'm assuming a lot of risk for my health insurance for my family. And nothing has changed. Our boys are healthy. They're young. My wife is healthy. I'm healthy. Nothing in our medical history has changed to warrant a tripling of our premiums. His wife adds, well, I'm the one that does the budget. Eventually, I've got that coming down the pike that I got to figure out where we're going to cut, what we're going to do to afford a $1,000 a month premium. The insurance carrier, Humana, they declined to comment for the story, but the notice that they sent, it had a paragraph that said the following, quote, if your policy premium increased, you should know that this isn't unique to Humana. Premium increases generally will occur industry-wide. Increases aren't based on your individual claims or changes in your health status, it continued. Many factors go into your premium, including ACA compliance, which is Obamacare, including the addition of new essential health benefits. Robert Zirkelbach, who's the spokesman for American Health Insurance Plans, right, which represents insurers, explained that, quote, for people who currently choose to purchase a premium policy that's more affordable for them, they are now being required by Obamacare to add all these new benefits to their policy. And that, he says, is going to add to the cost of their health care and health insurance premiums. This is a real-life story. This is not a letter from a millionaire or billionaire, and this is not the story of a millionaire or billionaire. This is a story of a husband, a wife, and 2 children who are buying insurance as individuals from the individual marketplace, who will now have to cobble together another $700 a month, and they have no idea how they're going to do it. This is the real story of Obamacare. Here it is. These are the people we're supposed to be helping. These are the people that when they passed this thing, they went around telling people, we're going to help you get insurance. These are the people this is supposed to be helping. And look what it's doing. I wish that was the only example, but I got an email here from Florida that says them too. Here's another email. This one's from Barbara in Palm Coast, Florida. I'm a master's level RN. She's a nurse who up until last week held a good job with good benefits. Due to the many new restrictions on employers, I have been reduced to part-time without benefits at age 64. It's starting to sound like a broken record. My health care workers are being cut in hours due to Obamacare. My company tried to offer me an insurance plan that I could afford to purchase, but I received a letter stating that it didn't meet the standards of the Affordable Care Act, and so I have until January 1st to purchase more costly insurance or have consequences. This is terrible. This is a terrible, despicable law, she writes, and I agree, that has damaged many more people than just myself. And then she closes with this extremely powerful sentence, okay? This is not from a millionaire or a billionaire, from the infamous 1%ers that you hear these protests against. This is from a nurse in Florida, and here's what she finishes with. I just want to live in a free country where I can work hard and support myself. Repeal this Obamacare. Well, you may ask yourself, is this really happening? People are losing access to their coverage? Let me read you something from a conservative right-wing newspaper, the New York Times, September 22nd, 2013. Federal officials often say that health insurance will cost consumers less than expected under President Obama's health care law, but they rarely mention one big reason. Many insurers are significantly limiting the choices of doctors and hospitals available to consumers. One more impact of Obamacare. They have created smaller networks of doctors and hospitals than they are typically found in the commercial insurance plans. In a new study, the Health Research Institute of PricewaterhouseCoopers, the consulting company, says that insurers passed over major medical centers when selecting providers in states like California, Illinois, Indiana, Kentucky, and Tennessee, among other states. In New Hampshire, Anthem, Blue Cross and Blue Shield, a unit of WellPoint, one of the nation's largest insurers, has touched off a furor by excluding 10 of the state's 26 hospitals from the health insurance plan that it will sell through its exchange. By the way, Anthem is the only commercial carrier offering health plans in this exchange. What does this mean? Let me tell you what this means. Obamacare says, if you can't find insurance, we're going to set up these government exchanges. And theoretically, not a terrible idea. You go online, you shop between different companies, they compete against each other, you find a price that works for you, you find a coverage that works for you, and that's where you go. That's where people are going to be required to go. That's where the people that got cut off the Walgreens insurance plan have to go now. That's where a bunch of other people have to go now. What are these companies doing? A couple things are happening. First, in states like New Hampshire, only one insurance company applied. So there is no choice, there is no competition. The exchange is one company, Anthem. Number two, what are these companies doing in order to offer these plans? They're basically narrowing the doctors and the hospitals that will see you. Now you may say, well, at least they get to go to a hospital or a doctor. Let me tell you where the problem is. Remember what they said when this passed? If you have health insurance and you like it, if you have a doctor and you're happy with that doctor, you can keep it. Not if you're on the exchange. Because if they're narrowing the number of people, the number of doctors and providers, that means chances are that you will no longer be able to keep going to the same doctor in the same hospital you were going to before. So now let's work that out. Let's walk through this for a second. Put yourself in the position of this nurse that wrote us. Let's say you're chronically ill. Let's say your child has asthma or some other condition. Let's say you just have 4 healthy kids, but you got to take them to the doctor at least once a year, right? And you love the doctor you go to. They know your family. They know your history. When you have a problem, you can call them on the phone. At 2 in the morning, you get a call right back. It avoids emergency room visits, by the way. You can get your doctor on the phone. Now you wake up, and all of a sudden, your company comes to you and says, hey, the insurance plan you're on right now, we're not offering it anymore. Go get it at the exchange. So you go over to the exchange, and you find 2 things. One, it's more expensive. And number 2, your doctor ain't on the plan. That's a broken promise. That's specifically what they said this law wouldn't do, and that's what it's doing. This is the real-life story of what's happening. You want to know why there's passion about this issue? You want to know why every Republican member of the Senate wants to repeal this thing? You want to know why privately some Democrats wish it would go away? Because of this. This is who we're fighting for. This is not just a fight against a bad law. This is a fight on behalf of people across this country that are going to be hurt by this. By the way, I have no idea, these people that have written me or others that are suffering, I don't know who they voted for in the last election. It doesn't matter. I don't know if they ever voted for me in 2010. I don't know if they supported the law when it first came out. But I know they're being hurt by this. And I know they're being hurt by this in ways that will hurt all of us, that will hurt every single one of us. I talked about it earlier this morning. I repeat it today. There is nothing more important than preserving, reclaiming, and restoring the American dream. It's the essence of what makes us special as a country. It separates us from the world. What is the American dream? It's pretty straightforward. This is a country where if you work hard and you sacrifice, you should be able to get ahead and earn a better life for yourself and for your family. Does this sound like the story of a law that's making it easier for people to get ahead? Does being moved from full-time to part-time work make it easier to get ahead? Of course not. Does losing a doctor that you're happy with make it easier to get ahead? Of course not. Does the fact that businesses are not hiring make it easier to get ahead because they're afraid of Obamacare? Does it make it easier to get ahead? Of course not. Does having your hours reduced from 29 to 26, whatever the figure was I read a moment ago, does that make it easier to get ahead? Of course not. if for no other reason, this law needs to be repealed because of the impact that it's having on the American dream. And I will reiterate what I've said time and again on this floor and here as part of this process. You lose the American dream, you lose the country. What you have then is just another rich and powerful country, but no longer an exceptional one. The American dream is at the cornerstone of what makes us different and special. And it's being threatened by this. And that's why I feel so passionately we must do everything we can, to call attention to what this is doing and try to change it. And I think if nothing else, Senator, the great service of these last, 19 hours, as your tie continues to loosen, if nothing else, I think people today across this country know more about this law and its impacts than they did a day ago. If nothing else, the people in this country are now increasingly aware of all the implications of this law on their lives, on their dreams, on their hopes, and on their families. And I believe this is just the beginning. And I hope that we can prevent these harmful effects from happening. But it doesn't sound like it. It sounds like there are still people here that are willing to shut down the government unless this thing is fully funded, unless we continue to pour your hard-earned taxpayer dollars. And the irony of it is, for Lewis in Cutler Bay, for Patty in Kissimmee, for Bill in Panama City, for Barbara on the Palm Coast, Florida, for all the people in these articles that were cited, for the Mangione family in Louisville, Kentucky, guess whose money's paying for this disaster? Yours. Your taxpayer dollars are paying for this catastrophe because of the stubbornness of saying this is our law and we're going to go through with it no matter all these anecdotal things that are coming out. And by the way, the only way you can get relief from the negative impacts of this law is if you can afford to hire a lobbyist to come up here and get you a waiver. The only way that you can avoid some of the disastrous impacts of these laws is if you could somehow figure out a way to influence this administration to write the rules in a way that benefit you. That's wrong. That is wrong. And I hope we will do something about this, and I think the last 19 some odd hours have been a huge step in that direction. Senator, I'm sure that I guess my question would be to Senator Cruz, I'm sure you're getting letters like these from Texas and across the country, given the events of the last day. This is what this is all about, isn't it? This is not a fight just against a law. This is a fight on behalf of the people who are being hurt by it in the most fundamental way possible. It's hurting their hopes and dreams they have for themselves, for their family. It's undermining the American dream. Is that not what this is all about?
I thank the